Hi there. Today I'm here with Francesco Cula, which is what I just learned
Perfect.
how to pronounce it. He is a DevRel at daily.dev. He's a Docker captain, I guess the only one in Italy. And he's a passionate Rust developer. And he also worked at the European Space Agency. Francesco, how's it going?
Thank you so much, Bas, for inviting me. I don't know if I'm still the only Italian Docker captain. I will find out soon because we have a Docker captain summit in Turkey. But for sure, I was the first one. So I hope that there
Ah,
are
okay.
more, to be honest.
Yeah, we will figure that out. So I know you just came back from Seattle, like for RustCon, right? Um, but before we talk about that and Rust in general, could you give us a little intro on who you are and what you're doing?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Francesco, developer advocate at Daily Dev. I'm from Rome, Italy. And lately, let's say in the last 6 years, I dedicated a lot of time to content creation, social media. I became also a public speaker. I spoke at many conferences. I'm just back from a conference, so I travel a lot. And apart from that, I create content. Lately, I've been creating content about Rust. I'm also writing a Rust book. I should be reviewing this now, but I'll do this after this podcast, of course. What else? I like to connect with people, especially developers. I have a past as a volleyball coach, so I come from the sports world. This is probably why I'm still so excited about tech, because I've been coding professionally just time for almost 10 years so far. So that's it. That's me.
So how did you start then, like 10 years ago?
Yes, so if you want to talk about computers, I also had a Commodore 64, so this sadly
Oh,
reveals
wow.
my age. But usually I start counting when I quitted my job as a volleyball coach, and I started focusing on like coding like 10, 12 hours a day. This is happened in 2015. So I decided, to change my life, have more an approach to like more to tech. Basically, I bet on coding and tech, and it was a very nice bet, way more than what I thought. And so yes, that's it. And I can tell the story if you want, but that's there are different things that happen. I was also I was also doing a computer science degree. The problem, Bus, is that I didn't like coding. So
Oh,
you,
oh, really?
you might think like, what are you even doing? Because I always loved the math and physics. I know that now everyone is quitting this podcast, but this is the
Hmm.
truth. So I liked the algorithm, the math part. So I was the only student who did all the math and algorithm exams and not the coding ones. Because
Oh, wow.
coding is like playing an instrument. Like sometimes you have a sort of like mental block, and if you
Hmm.
don't start, you probably know. Like probably if you're watching this, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't even start for real to get your hands dirty, every time you write even an HTML code file, it seems like exhausting. So I was that kind of person. I was doing some web development stuff, and yes, so that's the thing. I can share the quick story of what made it click. This is a part of my last talk in Berlin, or maybe you will regret this forever that I will never share it.
Yeah, maybe you can just share what technologies you started working with and
Mhm.
what was the point in time where it made click, where you started to like it actually.
Yes, so basically the quick story, I will do a quick version. I was doing my exams and at university, and I had an exam which was in C, and the theory part went well, but the coding part didn't go well, also because C is not the easiest programming language
Hmm.
to learn. So basically, I passed the exam, but at the very end, the professor told me, like, Francesco, the theory is fine, but the coding part is not very good. You will never be a
Okay.
developer.
That's what they
So
told you.
exactly. And so while I was driving home, I said, okay, now I want to like get my hands dirty for real, and I want. Basically, my computer science degree was almost over. I was just missing the
Hmm.
coding exams, so it's just clicked. I said, like, when I came home, when I arrive home, I will start coding for real. And so I Googled, like, how can I actually become, like, get my hands dirty for real? And I think I started coding for real in the worst possible way. What is the worst and hardest possible way to learn coding? Game development.
Tutorial
That's the
help?
hardest,
Gaming development.
hardest
Okay.
gaming development. Hardest things you can do. So I downloaded Unity 3D. I started coding in C#. I never had experience with C# before. And this is how I started. Like, very traumatic experience. But then I think that it was right for me, because I really needed something which is not that boring. As I told you, I come from the sports world. I used to work in a gym for 6 hours a day, balls bouncing, people screaming, people shouting. So for me, like, sitting at the PC, unless for gaming, of course, it was a very boring activity. Maybe it still is. I don't know. So basically, this is how I got started for real. And I think this is interesting because I don't know if we will talk about social media in some ways, but Unity 3D also is what got me on Twitter. Because in 2000, yes, I'll do a quick jump because it has been like 4 years of like trying to code and stuff or trying to do some games. It's very hard, by the way. In 2020, on the 5th or 6th of January 2020, I created an Android app on the Google Play Store using Unity 3D. So basically, I published an app using Unity 3D. Cool. You can create an Android application. It was a periodic table, simple idea that I had like 10 years ago. I created this application. Then I said this to my friends, which were not very interested, of course, because they were all grown people, so they are not interested in it. And I said, okay, let's start using Twitter to promote my small project, my small app, also to get some feedback. And this is how I got my first real connections on Twitter, people who shared very great feedbacks, even technical feedbacks. And this is basically what... So I don't know what the hell happened now, because now I'm doing a podcast on YouTube, but my first reason why I started using Twitter more, it was to promote this Android application written in C# and Unity 3D. So this is, maybe now you have a whole circle of like what has been my life so far. By the way, in the meanwhile, I was also working as a full stack developer. Maybe we skipped that part, but maybe that's quite relevant.
So you basically started as an indie dev?
Sorry?
You basically started with that app?
Maybe.
Your
I don't know. I don't think so. I didn't even know that this was a thing. All the times I like tech Twitter, indie I didn't even know what they meant. No, I've been working professionally as a full stack developer for the European Space Agency since 2017 to 2021, when I quit my job after monetizing.
What did you do there? That sounds super interesting. Rockets and stuff and space agencies.
Okay, so first of all, I never went to space, just to make things clear. I don't want to brag. I wanted to be an astronaut when I was 6. So let's say I didn't make it. Probably. I didn't make it, but I went close enough. Yes, so I've been working on I'm proud to say that I'm currently worked on a project which is on Wikipedia. So I'm always say this, like, if you want to check my project, go on Wikipedia and check a Copernicus project, which is basically Earth observation. There are some satellites that they go around the globe. So they are observing the Earth. And they're basically taking pictures. They have different sensors of different ways to check, for example, pollution of air, or even just some taking cool pictures, which I think each picture is like 8 or 10 gigabytes. So think about, and you take like hundreds, if not thousands, of pictures per day. So that's a lot of data. Once you start working on these things, you understand the complexity, which is not like a side project. Like, let's say if I have, let's say, a new feature, I want to test it. Like, I can't like download 100 pictures on my laptop. I have to download just 7, 8. That's already 80 gigabytes. And then, for example, we also had some problems with the format. There are some old PCs. You remember that some PCs, they can't handle more than 2 gigabytes or 4. I can't remember.
The FAT file system.
The FAT format. So that's this is problems that I really had to deal with. But the worst problem ever, it was with time zones. So I think I've been spending, I think, a month.
That.
No, you have no idea, Bas, because so you have a time zone, okay, and sometimes you have, maybe we have something which is in a time zone or in another time zone, okay. Now, what if there is a satellite that takes a picture that is on 2 time zones?
Yeah, that's just crossing a time zone.
Exactly. So we had this issue that I think is still not solved, because basically you are technically taking a picture which is taken in 2 different days. Because it depends.
Yeah.
Because it depends on the point of view of Earth. Just to give you an idea of like how things they get complex very easily, let's say in this way. And by the way, I was using Python, despite what people on Twitter might think. So I've been using Python professionally, for example, for web scraping or analyzing HTML, because basically all these satellites, they have different formats. They are all different space missions. They are not standardized at all. Standard is not even a word. So each mission has different sensors, different technologies. So we had to try to find a way to make them look similar. They were not. It's just, trying to put on your websites cards and apples and bananas. So you have, they still have to look like the same, but they have like sometimes different fields that depends on what the mission was about. What mission might be, to check the pollution of air. Some satellites, they have some sensors that other satellites, they did not. Some of them have been deployed, 5 years later. So they were creating more pictures or smaller pictures, or they had some extra stuff. So it has been quite weird, but this helped me a lot with working with the complexity of things. Like, it was also a big project with like hundreds of people on it. So this gave me really a taste of what like real programming is, getting crazy with like deploying things. We also had very cool.
So basically, you were like taking pictures every minute or every second, or I don't know what.
No, I had to sleep, so it was not me checking the pictures.
Yeah, not you personally, but you had those pictures, and they were just. No, your intention was to look what's going on Earth, like pollution and maybe a production output and something like that.
We were actually writing the code, for example, to download this picture properly, to decide what's the logic. I don't know if a picture, because just to give you an example, like how do these satellites, they upload these pictures? They can't use the internet because they are over the internet. So everything is complicated. So what happened is that when these satellites, they came across some specific points during while they were moving, they were uploading in some specific places on Earth. So they was basically sending these like petabytes of files every day. No, petabytes every day, no, but let's say a lot of terabytes probably. Petabytes maybe during months or years. I think it was, the volume was about 6 petabytes per year, but I'm not sure. And so, yes, so you see, everything was complicated, like even the simple stuff. And then starting from those sites, when we had to storage all these pictures, we were actually downloading these very raw pictures and files. And maybe the image was, inside a field, or I don't even want to remember that, because it was a really complex, let's say, experience. I also was writing some dashboard, some stuff. I don't know if I'll get sued for this. I don't think so. Otherwise, you will have to cut this. But I also wrote some dashboards, and I remember one of my worst or best projects. It was to work on a dashboard, and I get to refactor a dashboard, which was 80,000 lines of code, a single file.
Oh wow, a single file.
My finger was like hurting by scrolling. So
imagine that.
So you think that you have a long file. You have not. So, and I think one of the jobs that I was more proud of is what like reducing this file by like the half. Because for specific reasons, this could not have been split in files because, oh my God, we can't split in files. This has never happened. But at least I removed almost half of the lines. So almost half, it was still working even better than before. Even adding features, I removed half of the file. So actually I was paid to remove lines of code. This was a very nice sensation.
Which, by the way, is another proof that paying developers by lines of code is probably not the best metric.
I should have give money in that case. I don't know.
Yeah. Very cool. So, and from there, how did you get into web technologies then?
Yes, so I was still doing, for example, this dashboard was also web. I was using Angular and React on front end. I used many different technologies, including Docker, Python on the back end, Node.js on the back end. So I used different technologies. We also had some web services there. So it was not just the Python thing. I worked on many different projects. So we can say that I got involved into web development because also we had some web services that people can use. I think they are still online, by the way. So yeah, just to provide these pictures to the public.
Yeah, very cool. And from there, you got like into Rust. This is what you are really passionate about. I see you tweeting about that all the time. And we said it, you were just at the conference at RustConf in Seattle. So what makes Rust your language of choice?
Yes, just want to say that we skipped like 7 years of my life, but let's say it's fine. This is a quick version, just to give a quick idea. So 2020, I started staying more active on Twitter. Then COVID happened. So while some people, they learned, I don't know, how to make bread and pizza at home, I spent all the time on Twitter, and it was absolutely 100% well worth it because there were not much to do. And also I'm an introvert, so I don't want to say that I liked the lockdown, but let's say that I was not stressed about that. And this is why, the introverts, the revenge, finally. So quick story short, in 2020, I started also my YouTube channel. I also have a series of podcasts, by the way. This is also how I started to monetize the channel. In 2021, I quit my job for the European Space Agency, disappointing my parents that now are very happy because I earn like 10 times the amount of money. And what else? I started sharing posts about Docker, and I also became a Docker captain. I think that there is something here which is transparent, but it's like a prize that I won as the most consistent Docker captain in the world. I won.
Wow.
This is an award
That's
of
cool.
award. Like the problem is that it's transparent, so you can see it, but it's fine. So after that, I also started working in DevRel. I'll be quick just to give some context. Working in DevRel, the first company was related with AWS, so it's similar to what I think you are also currently working on. So I've been working with a company was trying to make the AWS deployment easy. Everyone is trying to make AWS deployment easy.
Yeah, there is a whole ecosystem of making AWS easier, including like
yes, exactly. So just because I know that you are working on something similar.
Yeah.
And then basically I was contacted on Twitter by the CEO of Daily Dev, Nimrod Kramer, and I became a developer advocate for Daily Dev. I've been doing this full time for 3 years. Now I work part-time as a developer advocate, which I think is great because this gives me more time and all the freedom I want, and I still like the technology and everything they are doing. Just to give some context, I got even the salary offer in the Twitter DMs. So just to give an idea that this might sound a bit crazy, but like using social media in the proper way, we can really change your life. I mean, now I've been in Seattle for a week. This would have never happened. There was no chance in the world that someone was like, knocking on my door saying like, "Hey, Francesco, we would like to invite you in Seattle. Do you want to come? We will pay for travel and accommodation." This is never happened. So
cool things happen if you just connect to people.
So you asked me about Rust. I hope you are ready now for a 4 hours Rust ranting. At some point, we probably also should mute him. Okay, no, I'm joking. So 2-3 years ago, I started sharing more about blockchain technologies, so Web3 blockchain technology, because I'm still interested into the technology. I was also going to conferences, sharing of all the educational stuff. I think I am more the less biased person in the world about blockchain because I was sharing technical content, educational content about blockchain without working for a blockchain company. So I was actually basically the most neutral person in the world, I think, to talk about blockchain because I was actually not working for a specific company. So all educational content. At some point I decided, okay, but now I want to code a bit more because at Daily Dev, which is an amazing company, I was doing a pure DevRel role. So some developer advocates, they also write some tutorials, like I was doing in the previous company. At Daily Dev, since they had like 30 people and there were like 29 engineers and no people doing like content, even if I have some probably some way I could have helped with the code base, they needed really needed like more the documentation or creating events, staying on social media. So I adapted to this. After a while, like happens for all the developers, you start missing coding. I also so I feel the need. It's like an addiction. So I said, okay,
you started with not liking it to really missing it, right? Yeah.
So the thing was like, how can I, stay in shape and not get rusty, pun word intended, for like with coding and stuff? Because blockchain technologies, they are cool, but maybe they are not that mainstream, and also to set up a development environment might be a bit clunky. The reproduction might be not that easy. There is a blockchain called Solana. It was also in Seattle. I've been at RustConf in Seattle. And they use Rust as a technology. So I said, okay, let's do a step back and let's learn a programming language instead of focusing on the JavaScript frameworks or a specific blockchain technology. Why? Because a language is always powerful. And usually the language, they never die. Even COBOL is still around. C++. All the languages are always still around. Maybe some of them, they are used a bit less. Like, for example, is Python for you. So I said, okay, let's bet on a programming language instead of a shiny thing, a shiny blockchain, or a shiny JavaScript framework. This has been a great professional choice because now I'm actually writing a book about Rust. I did a series about Rust. I got discovered by many people. You also asked about this now. I've been here at RustConf. Let me show this. This is thumbnail worthy. And so basically, and I also think I found something which is very cool, which is if you ever heard about Rust, you probably heard that Rust is not that easy to understand and learn, right?
I mean, that's probably what most people heard.
But this is perfect as a content creator because now you can simplify the language for someone. So the fact that Rust might not be that easy to learn is actually good for me because I'm creating content about Rust, and my job is basically to make Rust easier for you. So that was the best opportunity as a creator, no?
I see. That's a great way of thinking, actually.
Yeah, that's the approach. So as a creator, for me, this helped me, probably.
So, and like, what are the use cases of Rust that you like most of it? Like, is it systems programming? Is it like GUI applications? What is it?
So, just very quick, Rust has been, let's say, invented, inside Mozilla, the browser. So, let's say, to simplify things inside Mozilla. This is how it started. And it quickly moved more to be suitable to system programming. If you want to work on embedded devices, probably, I would say more sure, Rust is a great choice. One friend of mine, they made a joke and said I like JavaScript because you can run JavaScript even on a fridge. My reply was actually, well, if you want to write code on a fridge, probably Rust is a better choice. But thanks, but I get your analogy. So embedded devices for sure. The thing is that basically you can use Rust for different things. And now I'll say something a bit unpopular that might be a bit unpopular even in the Rust world. Some people agree with me, some people they don't. Rust can actually also be used for web development. And this is what made me start into learning Rust. Because, when you want to learn a new programming language, probably one of the best ways is to write something that you are familiar with, but with a different language. So, for example, if you wrote, for example, Django API, Flask API, then I'll tell you, okay, now you can write some APIs with Rust. Even if you don't understand some things about the Rust language, you say, okay, at least I know what's the output. So I still think that I'll die on this hill, that learning Rust with web development is a great choice. Instead of remove some dust from your Raspberry Pi and try to do some things. That's more a niche thing, and I think that is a great choice. I also want to brag a bit about Rust. The Stack Overflow survey, I think for 10 years in a row, Rust has been voted as the most admired programming language. What does it mean, admired? It means that people who use it, they still want to use it. It's like the Tesla of programming languages. So this does mean that once you start learning in it, I think not to know a single person who said, now I stopped using it. So people are just getting in and not getting out, which I think this will end very well for Rust. And this is also one of the reasons why I decided to learn it. But something happened also in this Stack Overflow survey. For the first time in the history of these surveys, Rust backend framework appeared in the most favorite web frameworks.
Oh, wow.
So as a backend technology, so it appeared there. I think it's Axum, if I'm not wrong. So there are different, but this is a great sign. So Rust can also be used on the front end, which might be mind-blowing. If you know
that was what I
WASM
was going to ask. It's like WebAssembly. You can also build front ends with it, right?
To be honest, if you write WebAssembly, you should write Rust code, because WebAssembly is about performance. So, I mean, you can still use you can still use Python as a WASM with WASM, but in that case, probably in that specific case, we can fight if you want. You need a more performant language. So you might still want to use Python on WASM, because why? For the same reason why Node.js is famous. You want Python on the whole stack. Okay. But Rust is perfect for WASM because it's high performant, so it's a great choice. So there are some few frameworks on the front end. One is called U, which is very similar to React. It's a bit weird, but I also made a video on it. And that's it. But I think that for now, I will not use Rust for a front end in production. I think that it's not mature yet. I might actually write some Rust code for a backend even in production. And I think one of the reasons is because of AI. I think we are 30 minutes and we never mentioned AI. This is a personal record for a tech podcast.
Absolutely. I mean, we can't get around that topic.
But the fact that with AI now you can rewrite some code, AI basically can write code for you, writing something in a well-performing language, I think is a good choice. You still have to know what you're doing. You can't, just write some assembly stuff or write some C stuff. Sorry?
It's not wipe coding all the way.
I'm against vibe coding, and we can also fight if you want. I also made a talk when I did something which is very funny. There was vibe coding mentioned at some point, and I did something similar. This was an improvisation of my talk. So I asked, who doesn't like vibe coding? And I raised my hand. Then I asked, who like vibe coding? And then I said, people raised their hand, and this is what I improvised. I took my phone and said, okay, let me take a picture, and everyone put their hands down. It was a joke, of course, but people took it personally, and when I raised my phone, I saw at least half of the hands going down. So
don't quote me on that.
That was funny.
Cool.
And yes, so
yeah, interesting. So if I understand correctly, this was a choice of your DevRel career, to double down on a language because it's kind of evergreen content that you could create.
I needed to get sharp. I needed to stay in shape with my coding skills. So I started this Rust series on the weekend. So this, and also I needed some content on my channel. I also wanted my channel to be unique. One of the reasons was because Rust has some unique features, like the way it handles memory is the one of a kind in programming language. So I like, trying to do something which is unique, which is a bit hard at the beginning, but once you get used, is you feel like you're doing something which is absolutely new. Also for me to learn something new. So that's the thing. So and then I am a developer, creator.
I think it's very important for developers to learn other languages, even if it's Rust or something else, because each language brings its own concepts, its own idioms, and there's always something to learn from it. Even if you apply it to the language that you're already using, there's always some mental shift happening that's definitely advancing what you're doing on the daily basis, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I think this is also challenging. Like this is why, for example, we don't learn a new programming language every day. I mean, otherwise we will get insane. But if you have some extra time, as I mentioned, I think that it might be more beneficial for your career to learn something which is a bit lower level than just trying to learn an HTML framework or another technology. I've been there because I know and used many different technologies. I have a series on my YouTube channel which is basically create a REST API with a framework and Docker. And I think I did at least 15 videos with different technologies like Go, Flask, Django, all these things, C# and so on. And so I know what it does mean. But when you want to learn something new, I think that trying to learn a language is a good choice. It opens up, to a whole different set of things. Let's say, let's just put Rust on a side. Otherwise, it seems I'm a bit too biased. Let's say that you've always just wrote JavaScript code, and at some point you decided to learn Python. This can open up to many new opportunities. Even the opposite, Python to JavaScript. So I think we can all agree that learning a new language probably takes an extra effort, but this can open up a lot of opportunities for our careers. Because to be honest, in this AI era, I don't know where we are going to, because AI is moving really too fast, and that's the real issue. Because I always make this analogy. In the Iron Age, we were moving, from bronze to iron weapons, but this happened like in centuries. People were also living less years, so they didn't have this issue. Like at some point you see a couple of iron weapons, it's fine. Now in 6 months you have a whole different LLMs and use cases and things and coming up and tools, and it's very hard to keep pace with this, even if in a career lifespan. So we need to adapt very, very fast. But I still think that developers will make it because they are very curious people. They are usually the people who adapt the most. And this is exactly what we want. So maybe we are struggling a bit, but some people might struggle more, or maybe they will not find a solution. So yes, so developers will still be around, probably, but we should not stop learning. That's very important, because if we stop learning, then we become like everyone else. And I think that understanding how the code does work, this is what will make the difference in the future. In the future, everyone can make an app, but if you know Python, you can do a better Python app that a person who never wrote in Python. But this is obvious, despite what people on Twitter might say, that you can do an app in one click. Yes, we'll both do an app with one click. If I'm a developer, mine will be better. If I have a social media presence, it might be also successful. So
you could go down the entire rabbit hole on how former Lisp engineers paved the way towards the LLMs that we have today, and there's also Prolog back in the day. You could have like even this backstory of JavaScript and the relationship between Netscape and some microsystems back in the day. That's very eye-opening to what happened in the industry. And Rust, as you said, is like one of its kind in terms of how it manages memory. So if you manage to find these things, it's very interesting and puts a very new perspective on what you're doing on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's
Yes.
really important. Another thing that you mentioned is like you worked in DevRel at several companies for quite a couple of years now. Could you explain what it means to you? Because I think people have very conflicting pictures of what DevRel actually means.
Yes, so DevRel stands for is the short, the friendly name for developer relations. I worked professionally with two main companies so far, but I also know many developer advocates. I think it's very hard to define developer relations because everyone has their own definition. It's like you're trying to define love. What is love for you? It depends on your personal experience. I'm not joking, because a developer job might be 50-70% technical. I also know there were some companies who were like hiring DevRels just for the sake of saying, hey, we have a DevRel, and they were coding like 100% of the time. This is a bit an extreme thing, but this happened also to some of my friends. So they were DevRel, but they were not DevReling. What is developer relations? Developer relations is putting in communication the company and the developers and vice versa. So it's very important to understand also the vice versa. So it's not marketing. It's not someone who's just advocating and posting on social media or doing just going and talk for the company. But this is also to get feedback from the community. Is a point of trust, because maybe I don't like some companies, but if I like the developer advocate there, I can reach out directly to them and say, hey, okay, but is this feature really cool, or is this just not? Because developers usually, they don't lie to each other. At least the good developers, they don't lie to each other. So even if I work for a company, if I don't like a feature, I can say, hey, boss, yes, we deployed this, but we still have some bugs, so please wait before using it. I can go more technical, and I can be more honest, and I can be more, and I can still have your trust. And I think this is very important. So developer advocate is to put in communication companies and developers. And I think this is very important because developers are very skeptical people. I mean, I was skeptical even before becoming a developer, now I'm more. And they are curious about how technology is done, how things are going. What is the rate limit of your LLM? So it's things that usually normal people, in quotes, normal people, they don't even care about. Sometimes at the dev we get a feedback hey, you have like an extra border here, you should change this CSS. This is a feedback for so we get some very technical feedback
delivered for free.
Exactly. Or say, oh, we have an error, I check the developer console and you have this and this. This is mind-blowing.
Very
this is the kind of feedback.
Of customers.
Yeah, this is crazy that you get this kind of feedback. But the truth is that once developers, they like your technology, they will become your best advocates and free advocates. I also advocate for some companies just because I like them. For example, the Docker Captain role that I have is a volunteer role, but I advocate for Docker because I really like it. So that's the thing. Now I'm doing similar things with Rust Conference, the Rust Foundation. So developer relations it's a very complicated and wide, let's say, area. It's a very blurred area. There are some responsibilities which might overlap. I think I made a series about DevRel on my YouTube channel. At some point I stopped because people on YouTube, they search more for JavaScript tutorials than developer advocates, which is sad, to be honest. But yes, there are different types of DevRel, different ways to get into DevRel. Usually, when you become a DevRel, you are already doing a DevRel. So basically, you are getting paid for something you already like. For example, let's say that you keep working on a specific project about Python. There is a company who is working Python, or the main stack. They might want you to become their developer advocate because you are already proficient in a technology. You already know how to make videos. You already know how to create a community. So usually, DevRel is something that becomes sort of natural. Let's say it's not like you wake up one day and say, okay, now you are a DevRel. Usually a company reaches out to you. You might actually want to try to find a company that suits you. The thing is that if you are a developer advocate, you are like the frontman of a rock band. So basically the company will have your face, which is good, but also bad. Let's say that the company has some problems, political, religious problems. You will probably get some of these because you are identified as part of the company, even if maybe you don't agree with 100%. But I want to make this very clear. If you want to get into DevRel, you need to get ready to expose a bit more. If you're working as a backend developer, just have to have your API that they work, and then you can do whatever you want. If you're working in DevRel, it's developer relations. So you need to relate with other developers, the features released, the bugs, something weird that happened in the company. I don't know, your website is not accessible. Is it your fault? Probably not, but maybe you should care about letting the people of your company know that they should make their website accessible. So, it's a different, job, which is a great job. Sorry, go.
Yeah. So that's basically the two-way approach that you mentioned. So it goes in both ways. Like the common problem with DevRel is like for companies, it's very hard to determine the value behind that. At least that's a very common discussion here. And also like the industry as such has changed quite a lot. Like we have seen zero interest rates, which we don't have anymore. We have seen the rise of AI, and some people are even like questioning if there are any dev or developers anymore. So what is that field evolving into?
Sorry, what did you ask something?
So what is that whole field of developer relations evolving into without all the uncertainties and the uncertainty, especially with respect to what value does it bring to the company?
Yes. So sorry. Can you repeat the question, because I'm not getting it? Just maybe.
So what I was saying is basically the companies are always like, what does it bring? What revenue do we get from hiring a DevRel? Also, like those people are quite expensive, or those roles are quite expensive, and we have seen like zero interest rates, which basically meant free money. We don't have that anymore. And also, like, is there even an audience? Because some people are questioning, are there devs anymore? Because maybe we are all getting replaced by AI. So what does it mean in the current day and age, basically for a company to hire a DevRel and for DevRel to be in that space?
So I think all the companies are different. I think some companies, they really need the developer advocate. Some companies, maybe they are well known, or maybe they just need a community role. But let's say that since developer advocate is also a simple like community role, like I don't know, even Vercel, like say well-known companies, they still need to create community events. They still need to engage with the community. So you see, there are different roles. I'm taking Vercel because I have a friend, Pauline, who works at Vercel. They still need, for example, now they need to promote the V0. How do you promote it? Like you need community events. This person is taking some V0 projects. I have made one. Probably I'll go there at some point. And so, you know what, Bas? I think that in this AI era, when everything can be written by AI, I say this in quotes, the human connection might become even more important, because now if everything can be written by AI, I want to trust a person who works for a company, and they can let me know if what they're doing is legit, is done well. They can advocate that they're not stealing people's privacy, data, and so on. So I think we need the human connection more than ever now.
Yeah.
To be honest, I think that in the last 2 years, I've seen people at the conferences even like engaging more and talking more, because maybe we need it more. James Plug will go to Committee or Code conference soon, so it will also meet. So this is a proof that maybe we need human connection more than ever, because this is how we are done. This is how
It's
how we
just
are.
how we are as humans, right?
Yeah, but this is not changing because we don't move
Yeah,
that fast as AI. We are still very similar to what we were like 50,000 years ago. So we didn't evolve
yeah,
much. We evolved
absolutely.
in things that we have to learn. But our body is basically similar to what it was 100,000 years ago. And I think that having a human that works for a company gives a lot of trust. And no, all the companies are structured in different ways. But I think even all the big companies, they have some community roles. They need to organize an event. I've been at the WixCon in India. They invited me, for example, and they are not even very focused on a specific technology. They're doing a good job for developers, but for example, they're not even like a very focused developer technology. They have Wix, as you can find it, for example.
Got it.
So I think that as the role of developer is changing, that the role of developer advocate is also changing. So probably they need to adapt more, organize more, automate things more, use AI to write documentation more. I wrote, for example, documentation for the dev before AI was cool. So I had to struggle a bit with Docusaurus and stuff. So I think that we'll still be around. I think we will still be coding for sure. Every time I read developers are done on Twitter, I think I quote tweet today someone who said developers, we don't need developers anymore. But let's pretend that for a second that we don't need developers anymore. Okay, so developers will all become jobless. Let's try to find
just
this
for
idea.
the sake of the argument. Let's pretend.
Okay, exactly. Okay, so what are all these people unemployed with a lot of free time do? Probably they will code more because they are developers. So we'll have a generation of people who will start coding more on their own and do more stuff. So we'll adapt anyway. I'm sure we will do, because this is how we survive. The only thing is that you know what's the real difference compared to for 20 years ago? 20 years ago, there was a new database and you can say, cool, I know Apache Cassandra, cool. I will check it next year.
Yeah.
Now you can't do this anymore. If we have a new model, the same day, the same week, you need to check what is that. When we had the MCP explosion, if you don't know what is MCP, we're not even a developer anymore. So this is the difference. The urge of understanding and staying up to date is becoming even more important. That's the only difference. Before you can, ignore a thing. Now ignoring something might be dangerous, depending, of course, on your job. But and this is, for example, why I advocate so much about improving the social media presence. This also closes the circle, because if everyone, as someone says on Twitter, can write an application in one click, then having a social media presence is more important now compared to 5 years ago, because now we all have the same tools. So the tools are becoming more, let's say, easy to access to everyone. Equalized, right. So having a social media presence, connecting with people is more important, because if you create an application and someone who has zero social media presence creates an application, your application will be probably more successful, but even if the code is the same, because people trust you more. People, they know your face. You put your face on the internet and say, okay, this person is risking their own reputation to put out this application. I trust this person more than a random person who I don't even know who they are. This will be scary to use an AI application written by someone who is absolutely anonymous. It might sound a bit sketchy, even if it's not, but it might sound. It's like a stranger asking you things. You're always a bit skeptical because you don't know.
Yeah. So to sum it up, what would your advice be for someone in tech who might experience a little fear of AI, or a little bit of uncertainty about all the things that are happening, including the layoffs that we are seeing? So what does it take to stay on top of the loop?
Yeah. So First thing I would say is to don't let AI win. I don't know if you ever saw the Terminator, the movie. We are not gonna let the machines win so easily. We will fight before giving up a lot. Even
Hopefully we will.
Exactly. So if you know Sarah Connor, you know what I'm talking about. So we should be like Sarah Connor. So we should really fight the machines and really don't let them win so easily. Do you know if you like this analogy? And you need to be stay curious. We need to be really open-minded. For example, I don't like people who say like I decided to not use AI. That's just it's an assumption. So it's like no, I will never use a car. That's like you're basically limiting yourself. So I don't like this thing. I might understand why some people might suggest to say, okay, don't use AI if you are at the beginning. I'm more open. I would say just stay curious. I think something very important would be to say, now that you have AI, don't use AI 100% of the times just to write code. Use AI to understand the code. Use AI to write tests. Use AI to create sites which are accessible, not just write boilerplate code. That's one cool use case. Use AI to create a plan for your application. Use AI to create issues, helping you with PRs, but don't destroy your current workflow. And not just generate code. Generate coding is cool, but I see many people like advocating for AI can write everything, and not many people advocating like, hey, with AI you can understand the code base. Almost no one is saying this. Maybe some people, but this is crucial. You can use it to understand things, and I think this will play a big role in the future. So please don't give up on control. That's my own thing, because if you give up on control and we don't understand what's going on, if we don't understand, I don't know, what course issues are, what is a session, what are cookies, then probably we will need someone to pay someone when we get in trouble. Yeah. And we know what does. We are developers. We have been professional for a while. Writing code is actually one of maybe it's the funny thing, but what is the real problem? You can tell me, what is the real problem? Infrastructure, things going down, DDoS attacks, security issues. These are the real issues with coding. It's not writing the application. Maybe now we can write an application in one day. Before we were writing an application in 2 weeks. Yeah. But once you have a running project, we have total different problems, and you are working on something to fix it, which is more about understanding the technology, understanding your project. Of course, I'm talking about production-ready projects. If you are a teenager and if you are writing something on your weekend just for fun, do vibe coding, try to do a game, do something. We're talking about professional things that has a revenue. That's a different story. It's like someone who is playing and someone who is doing this and get some money of it as a career. So we will not give up on control, because things will go wrong in coding. They always go wrong. That's why we are here. We are here to fix things in production. Writing the code is, I don't want to say trivial, but do you agree that is not something that is complicated, that so much complicated? Even like before we had maybe different tools, maybe it was a bit slower.
Ingesting all the requirements, making it safe, making it fast. That's way more than the actual writing. It's
the problem is that some people don't even know what we are talking about. So if you don't even know what we are talking about, it's fine. You say, okay, now I deploy this e-commerce written in one prompt. Fine. Then you will have some other issues later. That's the thing. It might be even being dangerous, because if you start, getting some people, getting some users, paid users, then your project goes down. These are the real issue. Maybe you quit your job because you have some bad revenue with your vibe coded app. Everything looks great. One day your production goes down because you have some issues on some servers. Don't even know what you're doing. So
that's the thing. Yeah. Those were some great insights. Thank you so much, Fran.
Thank you
Thank you
so much.
for being on that call.
Thank you so
Just
much.
one thing is, like I always ask people how to best reach out to my guests. So I think probably for you the best way is on Twitter or X as it is
Twitter,
called
or
now.
you can go on francescocula.com. Luckily, this domain was still available in 2020, so I was lucky enough to get that domain.
Very cool.
I was really happy about this. So there are many Francesco Cula in the world, but luckily none of them they took the domain. So you can find me at francescocula.com.
Francescocula.com. We will put that down in the show notes. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you.